All right, is it working? Here we go. Can everybody see me? Okay. Should be working, right? All right, cool. All right, here we go. So this will be fun. I'm gonna do these like probably, I don't know, I'll probably do one once a month, something like that. Sorry for the random time. Actually, we're gonna send out a survey to kind of figure out like what's the best time to do this. This was kind of just like a random last minute decision to do it. So probably later at night is gonna be better. And there's like a 30-second delay, just so you know. So everything I'm saying right now, I said 30 seconds ago, like when you're seeing it. But let's get going. So I have the chat open here, so you can just like, put whatever questions you have in the chat, and then I'll just pick random ones out and answer them. Yeah, cool. On the time delay, yeah, it's a good point with the EU. Anyways, well, I'll send out a survey, and then we'll just have to pick the best time. Whichever wins by survey, which means probably the best for most people. But all right, so I'll take the first question here. Is it bad to cut for too long? I've been cutting for 4 months now, only about 50% body fat. Want to get down to 10? Should I keep going or bulk for a few months? It kind of depends on your body. I wouldn't say there's a set like you can't cut for longer than this time because it depends on where your body's at. Like for instance, there was one. It was more just a case study. I wouldn't really say it was. It wasn't like a scientific study done with a lot of people, just one person, and it was a guy that started at like 400 pounds, and he was on a. It was medically supervised, obviously, but he didn't eat food for a year, an entire year. They gave him. He got his micronutrients that he needed to stay alive, and he got water, and that's it. And he lost like half his body weight, if not more. So he went from like 400 and something down to I think in the 180s or 190s in 1 year, and he was totally healthy. By all standards, he was obviously much healthier actually by the end of that. So I would say, I have an article. Actually, wait, what I'll do is I can link stuff here. I'm going to link an article on that kind of goes over how long you should be cutting for. I'll put it in the chat. And so it depends on, and this is relevant too, actually. So yeah, it depends on where your body's at, and depends on how lean you are. If you've been cutting for 4 months, and you're about 15% body fat, and your food intake hasn't dropped real low, and you're doing as much exercise as you can do, because you can go too far on the exercise. Some people do that. They think that you know cutting is just when things slow down, just do more exercise, more exercise, more exercise. And if you push that too far, you can burn your body out. You just don't feel good anymore. So you do have to balance, like when over time when you're cutting, unless you're trying to lose just a very little amount of weight, but if you're trying to make a significant change in your physique, you are going to have to either move more or eat less throughout that time period. But you can only move so much. Like for me personally, when I'm cutting, the most exercise I'll do is 45-minute weightlifting, workouts a week, and about 2 hours of HIIT cardio total a week. And that usually, I think that I usually do it, like I usually do 4 30-minute sessions would be the most. But I work up to that. Like I would start with 3 probably 20-minute sessions and 5 weightlifting sessions, and use my diet to lose as much fat as I can with that. And then I would change, once I'm stuck for 7 to 10 days or so, where my weight isn't changing and I'm not getting any leaner, like my measurements aren't changing, then I would up my cardio I would probably go from like 3 20-minute to 3 30-minute, see what that does, and then I would add a fourth day, and then so that's the most I could exercise. Then I would start reducing food intake. And I don't reduce. I'll get down to my BMR or a little bit below my BMR and stay there for a week or so, but I don't go way low with my calories. At that point, I just know that that's the most I'm going to get out of this cut, and then it's time to reverse diet, which I linked in the chat there. Get my metabolism back up to speed, just give my body a break, and then if I need to go again, I would just go again. So here's another one I've been using. Regarding what's in the New You challenge versus what's in BLS, I think what's in New You is a little bit more involved. If I remember correctly, you're working out your BMR, then you're working out your TDE, and going back to turning it into macros. Whereas BLS gives kind of a shortcut. And looking at those macros though, like the calories are more or less the same. That's really just not going to make a difference. You could go with whatever you prefer. Personally, I prefer a little bit more protein because it's more satiating. But when you're that close on the calories, it's kind of just personal preference. Someone asked when will BLS come out. Actually, I'm waiting. Oh my god, I'm waiting for sales page changes. It's almost done. It's going to be today. The new books are going to be out today for sure. I'll be emailing them. I want to. I don't know. Maybe in the middle of this, it'll all be done and I can like announce it. But yeah, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for that. It will be today for sure, though. I mean, everything is ready to go except for the stupid sales pages, which have been taking forever. It's outrageous. Someone's asking if creatine is fully safe. Yes, creatine is completely safe. Unless, if you have kidney disease, I think then it might not be a good idea. But if you're healthy, that's been thoroughly studied. There are no health risks to taking creatine, unless you were to take it very stupidly. Take 25 grams a day and drink very little water or liquids. But if you are staying hydrated and you take 5 grams of creatine a day, you're good to go and you're going to get all the benefits from it. Yes, we do ship to Legion does ship to the UK. I wanted to have. It's just it's a bit expensive. I actually do have a solution for EU for getting the shipping costs down. The problem is it's just very expensive to set up, and I only have so much capital right now for expansion purposes, and it's all getting put back into US stuff and launching new products and whatever. So, I hope to by the end of the year, I hope to be able to set aside a chunk of money to take care of the EU and just really get it set up so that I can ship. You would order from the website, but you would get cheap shipping. It would, be like $10 or whatever, normal shipping costs. Because all the products are actually going to be sitting in a warehouse in like the Netherlands, I think it is. Let's see. I'll address this point of so there's an MCL sprain and then straining the psoas because I've gone through psoas problems. I never strained my psoas. I wouldn't, but I've just made it so sore and so pissed off that I had to just come off my heavy squats and heavy deadlifts. Same thing with hip flexors, particularly with squatting. There was like a period for a couple months where my hip flexors, they just weren't able to keep up with the bigger muscles in my legs. So I had to drop my squat weight to like, I was up around 350s and I had to drop back to like 275 for several weeks and just go higher rep because my hip flexors were so rocked. So, in terms of working around what you're running into specifically, yeah, you can reduce the weight and see how that does, but if it's aggravating the areas, you have to just stop doing the exercises. Like when I had my hip flexor problem, when it first started, I had to just not squat for 1 or 2 weeks. I had to just do something else because it just hurt. It wasn't an injury, but the muscles were so sore from some real heavy lifting that I was doing the weeks prior. And then I just had to like lay off it and let it get better. I've had the same thing. I didn't again. I mean, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's really an injury, but I had just pissed off one of my bicep tendons. It was my left bicep tendon, and it just kept on. It just wasn't getting better. It just was like kind of uncomfortable when I'd be curling. So I just stopped curling for. I think I stopped curling for 6 weeks. And then it just when the problem got better, went away, and then now I'm totally fine. Ironically, I think I only lost like 5 pounds of my curl in that time, which just shows how effective heavy compound lifting is for maintaining, particularly with the arms, because when you're doing heavy pulling, it just involves the biceps so much that fortunately I was able to keep deadlifting. That didn't make it. It didn't piss it off. So, but anyways, back to this question here. Yes, you can go lower weight, but if it still is a problem, lay off it completely, and you have to just rest. Sometimes you just got to do that. I've had it one time with my left forearm. Randomly enough, I think I was cutting and I was going really heavy on deadlifts for cutting. and I was like probably around 440 or something like that. And I don't know, it just kind of got, again, it wasn't like an injury. It just kind of got mad, and then when I would do barbell row, it just bothered my left forearm. So I had to stop barbell rowing for, again, probably like 6 weeks. I could do other exercises, but just having my arm in this position rowing, didn't like it. So sometimes you just got to do that stuff. Workout app is going to be out. It's rolling. The development is actually in a bit ahead of the design, but I hope to have a beta ready type of product. I've been saying around April for that, and I think that's realistic. Another month or so to get it all done, and then play with it internally and just get it beta ready. Yeah, it should be like a month. Uh, Regarding casein, yeah, the cancer risk is overblown. It's like with the meat and cancer, where like anything that elevates IGF-1 levels a lot is not going to be good if you don't use your body. If you don't, if you're not like, because IGF-1, it accelerates all cell growth, right? So if you're breaking your muscles down regularly, you're exercising regularly, your body has a need for accelerated cell growth because it has to be constantly replacing damaged tissue. But if you're sedentary and you don't do anything with your body, then you don't want a bunch of IGF-1 elevation, because that's where the association with cancer would come from. And giving nightmares, I've never heard anything about that. But this actually brings up an interesting point. It's an article I'm going to write. I have it on the schedule. I just haven't quite placed it exactly where. And that's about food intolerances, and because there's a lot of just bro science and bullshit when it comes to food allergies versus intolerance. Allergies you can get tested for, blood tested, no question. You want to know if peanuts are going to kill you or something like that, you can go get blood tested and find out. But allergies are trickier, like intolerances, right? Obviously, gluten sensitivity is the big thing right now, and I've written about that. And a new study, actually, I just saw a new study on that showed that some people are gluten sensitive. It's not that it's total bullshit. It's just not as much. It's not as prevalent as mainstream health gurus would want us to believe. And in the end, when it comes to food intolerances and finding out what foods you do well with and what foods you don't do well with, the only like real scientific way, well, it doesn't even seem that scientific, but the only reliable way is food elimination and challenging. Meaning, so if you are having problems like GI issues or something that you suspect is related to the foods that you're eating, you have to eliminate foods that could be could be potentially causing the problem, regardless of. And this is where you can be kind of like anecdotal with it. I mean, if people that have your issue, if it's like some skin issue, let's say eczema or something like that, and you're reading online other people, let's say on forums, that have eczema problems, and they have found that certain foods trigger, kind of like migraines, where scientists, they don't really know why people get migraines, and they just know that there are certain triggers. They don't even know exactly why, but that's just the body reacts to these things, like the chemicals in red wine, or what else? What are the other migraine trigger foods? I don't remember. But there are certain foods that are just kind of anecdotally known, like these foods tend to trigger migraines. Similar things with other problems in the body. You have to eliminate foods and then see how you feel. So if you eliminated a bunch of foods that could be potentially causing your problem, and then you feel better, well, okay, that's a good first step. Now you need to start systematically reintroducing foods, which they call challenging. So you reintroduce whatever one of the foods you eliminated, you eat it regularly for several days, see how your body feels. Feel good, okay, reintroduce. So in terms of casein, if casein gives you nightmares, if like, and if that's where you drop the casein and you're good, you bring the casein back, you get nightmares. Hey, I don't know, who knows why that might be, but it might have nothing to do with it. It may, but more the point is, it's just good to know that in general, that is how you determine really what types of foods your body does best with. You could go get ALCAT tested and do blood testing for food intolerances, but the problem is you'll get a lot of false positives. So you're gonna get this long list of foods, and I know people have done this. My mom got all into this. You get this long list of foods of all this shit that you're not supposed to eat, and this stuff's super bad for you. And but the reality is, a lot of those are going to be totally fine for you. Some of them may actually be an issue, but the only way that you could really get the answer you'd be looking for would be, you could do a fancy test like that and spend a bunch of money on it, and then do the elimination and re-challenging, or you can just be a bit more, sorry, I'm just checking Skype. You can just be a bit more I guess just loose with it. So someone's saying I should be more concise. Okay, okay. Oh wow, a lot of questions. Okay, let me find another one here that. Do you have any long-term? Long-term, here, I'll take this one. So, do I know of any long-term detrimental health effects associated with doing bulk and cut cycles? The stripping off fat, putting back on, rinse, repeat, cause harmful health effects? No, definitely not. There's even research that shows that the traditional kind of yo-yo dieting that people do, which is where this isn't even, they're not using resistance training to maintain muscle mass. They're just basically starving themselves to lose fat, and then coming out of that binging to gain a bunch of fat back, or slowly regain. But a lot of people, they come out like they starve themselves down, they lose 30 pounds, they're finally okay, they can eat food again, and then within 3 to 4 months they've put all that weight back on. There's research that shows even doing that cyclically multiple times actually doesn't ruin it doesn't harm your metabolism. It doesn't even necessarily harm your health. The only potential harmful effect of it is that if you're losing muscle when you're starving yourself, which you do to a degree, the body, obviously, there's a point where even if you were eating nothing, if you were just fasting for long periods of time, say you fasted for 2 or 3 days at a time, your body's only going to shed so much muscle, and that's been shown also in research. And the reason why is if you lose too much lean mass, you just die. I mean, you see that in AIDS patients, right? That's why a lot of the muscle-related research, especially with muscle wasting, is related to AIDS. A lot of the money out there, because that's a real problem with AIDS patients, where they lose so much muscle where eventually the body just fails. Your heart fails and you die. So you're only going to lose so much muscle even by starving yourself. There is a point where the body kicks in hormonally to preserve what muscle it has left. But over time, if you naturally lose muscle as you age anyway, if you don't do anything to prevent it, like resistance training would be the real key, and making sure you eat well. If you're not doing that, you're already naturally losing muscle, and then if you also flip between starvation and overeating diets, you're going to accelerate that process. So, but for people like us that we're interested in being fit and we know what we're doing, where yeah, we're putting on body fat, but we're building muscle, and then we're losing body fat and preserving muscle, there's nothing wrong with that health-wise. Let's see. Something on B2. Some question here on B12, which is really true acne for people that suffer from acne, whey protein. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard things like that too, and never really found any good evidence on it. Even claims about dairy messing with hormones are it's not reliable. I used to have acne when I was younger, and I mean, from what I know, it's mainly just hormonal, and there are certain foods that can trigger in certain people, but when I was a teenager, I tried all kinds of things like that, trying cutting out different types of foods and trying anything I could really, and it just didn't really seem to make a difference. So can't really be sure on that. Other than it kind of goes back to what I was saying with food intolerances. You have to just see how your body responds. If you were some people, they get GI, gastrointestinal issues from creatine, even from just 5 grams a day. And it doesn't matter what form. It could be mono, or it could be a more water soluble form like micronized or whatever. It just, their body doesn't like creatine. So that could be the case with B12 or whey. But it's definitely not true that it's like a known reliable acne trigger. Let me find another one here. I'm going to skip over some of the more personal questions. You can always email me with those. So I'm going to try to pick ones that would have a bit more just broad application for everybody. I'll take this one. So, is cardio necessary to lose body fat, or can you just drop your calories lower? If you don't have problems with cravings, can you just lower your calories? So cardio, I think especially high intensity interval cardio is a great way to accelerate fat loss. There's no reason not to do it. Not only with HIIT do you burn more energy, but you also burn more fat, which I mean I've written about it. You can just search for interval on Muscle for Life, and you'll see. At home, good at home routine for abs. It doesn't include the ab roller. Yeah, I'd say a lot of leg raises, ab rolling, air bikes are good, but that's hurting the lower back. Leg raises are hurting the lower back. I mean, crunches are okay. There are some fancier type exercises like dragon flags are kind of cool. Any sort of leg raise is good. Um, you can't reduce. Someone's asking about reducing body fat in the lower back area. You can't basically. Your body is going to when you restrict your calories, you do everything right. Your body's going to get rid of fat from it where it wants to really, and it is going to reduce total body. But we have areas that go faster than others. Basically, you're dealing when you start getting as a guy, you start getting in the 10% range. Really, then you're just dealing with stubborn fat, and that's the fat that just is resistant to the chemicals that mobilize fat stores essentially, and it takes more time and it's slower, and that's where supplementation and also fasted training can help. Like if you train fasted with caffeine, with yohimbine, and even HMB is good for this. HMB is a real overhyped supplement right these days. It's not like because there was this UT study that basically demonstrated that HMB provides like better than steroid type gains. So people, I mean, I've had a lot of people send that to me like, oh, should I buy HMB? No, that study's bullshit. No way. There's just no way. It's a metabolite of leucine, and it works as well as steroids. I don't think so, but HMB is very anti-catabolic. And there's actually some new research that just came out that shows that it can increase the growth hormone response to exercise, which doesn't matter for building muscle, but actually does matter for losing fat. And it's going to be I'm releasing soon a fat loss product that you can stack with Phoenix that's going to be specifically for fasted training. And it's going to include HMB and yohimbine, which are great for losing fat and preserving muscle when you're training fasted, which in turn is good for not just losing fat faster overall, but particularly losing stubborn fat faster, because that can be very slow. Okay, I'm going down now. You can do, someone's asking about cardio. It's probably best to separate cardio from weightlifting. There is conflicting evidence on this, but I think that the weight of the evidence is more on that it's probably better to separate so you're not sending mixed messages to the muscles essentially. But if you can't do that, it's not a huge problem. You can do your cardio after you lift. Don't do it before, save, because you don't want that energy. You need your energy for weightlifting. Heavy deadlifting, heavy squatting, pressing, that's way harder than just doing some HIIT cardio on the recumbent bike. So personally, what I would do is I'd probably lift and then have just like a scoop of whey and water and then go do my cardio is what I would do. Regarding training fasted, when I'm cutting, like I stay pretty lean throughout the year. So when I'm cutting, I'm basically always just trying to get rid of stubborn fat. So I lift and do cardio fasted. I do and I take caffeine, yohimbine, green tea extract. I mean now I take Phoenix, my own product as well. But I like do everything I can basically to lose that stubborn fat as quickly as possible. And I find that my body does okay with fasted weight training. I'm stronger if I have a bunch of carbs before I lift. But I also train early in the morning, which isn't the best for strength. But it's not that bad. Like I probably lose maybe 10 pounds across the board on my lifts to train fasted, which is not a huge deal considering when you're cutting, you're just trying to maintain muscle anyway. So, I'm not that concerned about it. Carb cycling, not really. I don't know. It's on why. I wrote an article on if you search low carb on Muscle for Life, you'll see that low carb is just overrated. Period. So carb cycling is where you're going higher carb usually in your training days, and then lower carb on your rest days. Depending on how many days you're training, though, you might have to be low carb on your training days as well. And the reason why I'm just not really into it is because those low carb days don't really do that much for you. You're not going to burn more fat because you're on a low carb day. You're just not. And if you want to see some research behind that, search for low carb on Muscle for Life. I've always just kept my carb intake steady, and I guess the only exception to that would be if I'm using like a surplus deficit type of dieting, which I talk about in Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, where I'm in a slight calorie surplus on my training days, and then I'm in a moderate deficit on my rest days to balance my total weekly intake, so I can basically I can stay lean, but have that little bit of extra food 5 days a week, or 6. Really, it's 5 days, 4 or 5 days a week, which helps keep the weight moving up in the gym in my lifts. If I am doing that, then my carbs, it's not cycling, but my carbs are much higher on my training days, because that's really what I'm manipulating. I kind of keep my dietary fat between, depending on where my calories at, but 50, 60 grams a day would be my normal. And if I'm really eating a lot of food, let's say I was bulking, maybe I'd go up to 80, maybe 90 grams a day, just because there's a point where I just get sick of carbs. I don't want to eat any more carbs, but I'll take my carbs up to 500 grams a day, or even a little bit higher, before I will shoot my fats up, because I find that 200 grams, when you go from 200 grams of carbs a day to 300 grams of carbs a day, you're going to feel that in the gym. You're going to have a lot more energy. You're going to be able to push more weight. When you go from 300 to 400, it's another big jump. I feel a difference even from 400 to 500, but I find that when I go beyond 500, I just don't really, that's the most glycogen that my muscles are going to hold, and that's everything. So it kind of becomes diminishing returns after that, because it's hard to eat that many carbs a day. It sounds cool at first, until every day you have to eat a lot of, you need a lot of very, very carb dense grains and bread and pasta and things that are it's just heavy food, and you get sick of it. Do I ever shave? Not really. This is pretty much how I always look. I don't care. Okay, I'm going to go down now and grab something else. Regarding the HMB, to clarify, yeah, HMB is not a muscle building product. That's what it's sold as right now. It's sold as this, like I said, there was this UT study, University of Tampa study, that recently has made its rounds, that I forget the numbers. It was like the guys gained like 16 pounds of muscle in like 8 to 10 days, and lost 6 pounds of body, 8 to 10 weeks, and lost like 6 pounds of body fat. Something ridiculous. Something that you would have to be on a lot of drugs. These are resistance trained guys too. So HMB is just not, that's bullshit. It's not a muscle builder. It's not, it's not creatine. It's not going to directly help you build muscle. But what is cool about HMB, and this is well established, is that it's very anti-catabolic. So that means that it prevents muscle breakdown. And that's what you want when you're training fasted. Is you need something, because when you're training fasted, the muscle breakdown rate is accelerated, and especially after you train. So what you want, though, is you want something that prevents that instigates protein synthesis, so that can offset the acceleration of the muscle breakdown. And currently what I use leucine for that. HMB is a metabolite of leucine, meaning that your body metabolizes leucine, and one of the chemicals that it breaks it down into is HMB. And some dude, what's his name? He's the kind of a troll, actually. I forget his name. He discovered it, patented it, whatever. It's his thing. And he, of course, then he's involved in and funding research that shows it's better than steroids. It's not better than steroids, but it is very anti-catabolic. So that's why it's great for a fasted training product, because you have to use very little of it, which means like no insulin response. I think it's like 200 milligrams is all you need. And then on top of that, there's also new research that just came out that showed that when you're lifting with HMB, the growth hormone response is higher, which again doesn't matter for muscle growth at all. But it does matter for fat loss, and that's what this study showed. So HMB is cool for fasted training, yes. It's, if you want to get it just for that, then sure. But that's why I'm kind of putting it in this product. Like basically, I want to make it something that is better than BCAAs. BCAAs are overrated. If you're eating enough protein every day, you don't need BCAAs unless you're training fasted. But when it comes to BCAAs, the valine and the isoleucine are kind of worthless. Really what you want is the leucine. That's the key for fasted training purposes. So in my product, I'm leaving out the other two amino acids, and I'm taking a metabolite of leucine, which I can use less of, and which also increases growth hormone production while you're working out, which helps with fat loss, and including including yohimbine, which you need to be fasted to use, and it also accelerates fat loss. And then choline, which is something totally different, but it's there because research shows that it can help you with focus. So it's kind of I'm excited for it. This is a product I just wanted myself, so I can stop taking, so I have less bottles, so I can just take one product instead of having to take my leucine and yohimbine separately. And I don't buy choline just because it's cool, but I don't want another bottle. But if it's in the product, I would use it, kind of thing. So that's the HMB story. I'm glad you're liking it. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Like I said, I want to do these like probably every month. I'll do them. Uh, regarding the wide grip pull-ups, yeah, that's a good point. I could see that. I mean, a lot of people realize a lot of people that come onto my programs have weightlifted, like they're already semi-experienced weightlifters. But you can just do lat pull downs instead until you get stronger. But you'll find that you're going to get stronger pretty quickly. Like it won't be long before. I mean, good example is a guy that was working at. He works out with me in the morning. He's 49, 50, and he had done a little bit of CrossFit and hurt himself standard. And when he came, he was pretty weak and not like super out of shape, but it wasn't in shape, dude. I don't think he could do one pull up. And now he's finishing his back workouts with like sets of 6 or 7 wide grip pull ups, and that was 3 or 4 months. So you'll build strength quickly. I'm gonna take this question on nootropics because it's a they sound cool, but part of the problem is, and this similar to fat burner type products, I don't know of any nootropic out there that is properly dosed, and the reason why is because it's very expensive. The good molecules that would make a good nootropic are very expensive to get enough of. And I've messed around like vinpocetine and what was there's obviously alpha GPC, and there is 5-HTP, and there's huperzine A, and I've tried like 7 different ones, ironically. So I was like messing with them just to see if I'd notice, because all my work is thinking and whatever. So I thought I'll try them. I mean, I'm not interested in the drugs, but I'll try natural stuff and just see if I notice anything. And I can't say I really noticed anything in that regard. I think though maybe I'm not the best test subject for it, because I don't struggle with like energy or mental clarity or anything. So it really would have had it been like impressive for me to know something. But I know that there's good research on a lot of those molecules, and a lot of people notice that there's a difference there. But again, they're expensive to put in proper dosages in a product. So I'm actually interested in creating nootropic, but right now we're in the research phase of it, because just because I didn't particularly notice difference with those molecules, it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't. I mean, I'll get people every now and then that they'll and they're not even like, they're not challenging me. They're surprised. They're just kind of surprised that they'll be able to take 2 scoops of Pulse, which is 350 milligrams of caffeine alone, not to even mention everything else that's in there, on an empty stomach, and feel nothing. And a couple people have been even friends of mine, so they're not trolling. They're not just making it up. And what does that even mean? How do you have 350 milligrams of caffeine alone, just that alone, with theanine, but let alone everything else, and feel nothing? Like, what? So, obviously, probably all of us, we feel 350 milligrams of caffeine, but some people don't feel it at all. So I'm looking into a nootropic, but again, it would. The question is, can I produce a good enough product at a price that allows me to, make enough money to even make it worth it, and that could sell at a price that isn't ridiculous? I don't know yet. And it would be cool though. It'd be cool. I would like it myself. Food cravings. There was an article posted on MFL recently written by a guy named Harry. I may write my own on it. It would be a bit more, be like a definitive guide kind of thing. Um, it's kind of a long story on that one. Well, there are the obvious mistakes is just being in too big of a calorie deficit. That's going to screw with cravings. Restricting food too much. So what it is that you're craving, the more you don't have it, the more you're going to want it. So a good thing to do is work in foods that you like. When I'm cutting, I always have some sort of little dessert. I'm not like a super dessert person. I don't have a huge sweet tooth. Although ironically, I have a very high tolerance for sugar. I can eat a ton of sugar and feel okay. But I'll usually, like when I'm cutting, I'm going to have probably about a 200 calorie dessert every day. So if you were, and again, like that's probably about 7% of my daily calories or so. And I recommend the same. I recommend if you're cutting, what are you craving? Chocolate, cool. Work some chocolate into your diet every day. Unless you're the kind of person that when you take one bite, you can't stop yourself. And then we go over into the psychological side of things, where, and there's overlap there. You can't say that cravings, you can't separate the physiological from the psychological, and just say, well, your cravings are just because of these physiological things, and there's always an overlap there. So I mean, if it's more just related to hunger, then that is probably physiological. But if it's just a desire to eat things, even like disrelated to hunger, it's not on a, well, then that's more of a psychological thing. And part of that is like, I mean, you have to realize if you're familiar with me and my work and just like when I talk about my experiences cutting are not the normal thing. Like for me, cutting is very, very easy. I don't get hungry. It doesn't matter how many calories I eat, when I eat, whatever. I physically do not feel hunger ever. I feel sometimes lower energy, never hunger. I don't have cravings ever. Like I just don't. I don't ever have this overwhelming urge to eat something where I just go out and splurge. Like my version of that is like I'm eating my dinner and it tastes good. And not even when I'm cutting, I don't even do this. But if I'm like, oh, if I'm eating something that tastes good, maybe I'll have like 3 extra bites of it. That's my binge, you know what I mean? But it's just, so I don't run into these issues. But, so when you hear about me talking about those things, don't think that's normal, because it's not. The normal experience when guys, let's say guys trying to get under 10% or girls trying to get under 20%, the normal cutting experience, what you should probably expect is that it's going to suck. Like, unless you've done it multiple times, and that also helps you psychologically adjust to it because, I don't know, you know what to expect. Like, you shouldn't be starving all the time, but there's a reason why people, especially guys and girls that compete, they get really lean, why they say it's misery, because there is a point where it turns into misery. Getting lean doesn't have to be miserable, but just realize that like your experience might suck. It might suck for you, and it doesn't mean you're necessarily doing anything wrong. I mean, what you are doing when you're cutting is slowly but surely starving yourself. Like that's what you're doing. It's mild starvation, and it doesn't mean it's unhealthy, but that's what a calorie deficit is. So some people's bodies and minds react differently to starvation than others. And from what I've seen working for a lot of people, it does seem that some people's minds and bodies overreact. I mean, I just recently I heard from a girl. She was I think about 1,700 calories a day, active, relatively lean, and cutting at 1,700 calories a day. That's actually really good for a girl. And she was like saying that she was craving everything, starving all the time. That's strange. I mean, that's 17, it might even be upwards of 1,800 calories a day. That's where it's hard to say. I can't know exactly without really working with her, but I would suspect that's more psychological than physiological. She also is coming off of just a very high calorie diet where she was eating more than she should have been. Like basically coming from a bulk and getting really used to a good calorie surplus to then flipping to a 20-25% calorie deficit. Some people, their bodies just freak out, and they psychologically freak out too, because every meal is smaller, and when you start breaking down your macros, all of a sudden certain foods don't work anymore because they're just too fatty, or too many calories for the satiety and whatever. So yeah, so it's just people have different experiences cutting, and it does get easier the more times you do it though. We should totally make a Reddit. That'd be cool. Yeah, if I don't even use Reddit, but if somebody wants to do that, let me know, and then I'll jump in there. BCAAs, it's just for before fasted training. Yeah, 10 grams is fine, because that'll give you, really what you want is 3 grams of leucine. That's what you want. So personally, I just buy leucine because it's cheaper. You can buy it in a big thing. It tastes like shit, but who cares? You put it in your pre-workout and you drink it, and it makes the pre-workout taste a little bit shittier. Whatever. Yeah, anything Dr. Oz says, I would ignore, but I guess it's possible. I'd have to look into it, but he's basically a troll. No, I didn't go to college, because I finished high school at a pretty young age. I finished when I was 15 because I never took any spring breaks or summer breaks, and I had gotten enough credits to graduate by then. And I went to a private school, and they were just like, you could continue, you finished like your everything, and you have enough credits to graduate. You can do pre-college, you can get a college type stuff, or you can not. And at the time, in speaking with people like my dad, who successful business guy or whatever, and then people he knows, including some guys that had gone to Ivy League schools and stuff, basically asking them, do you think I should? I didn't have a vocation. I didn't say like I couldn't say I wanted to go be this. I wanted to go learn this specific skill that would require college. It would have been like, I don't know, go get a business degree of some kind. And basically, from the people I spoke to, there's like, don't even waste your time. They're basically saying like, if you want to do your own thing, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just go work and go do it. It's going to college is going to do nothing for you. And the only exception to that, I guess, would have been like getting into an Ivy League school to get into that circle where you make friends of very rich, influential people, basically, and you can use that. But I was like, whatever. So I started working and did a bit of traveling. My wife is from Germany, and we've been dating. We've been together since I was 17. So I would go to Europe a lot and have fun and stay there and just travel and eat and whatever. So kind of had some fun and then got serious about life and started doing my own thing. Regarding stretching, I'll take that one. I actually don't do really any stretching because I just don't need to. Well, that's not true. I get a massage every week, and she is more of a sports massage. Like she used to work on Olympic rowers and stuff, so she does do some stretching stuff with me. So I do stretching, I guess, but it's not me doing it. But what if that weren't the case, then I would be doing some stretching stuff and I'd be doing some mobility stuff. If you search for mobility on Muscle for Life, you'll see what I've written about it. That's what I'd be doing. I don't do so much of it myself because I work with this girl who, instead of me foam rolling my quads, for instance, she just destroys them. So, and like in hamstrings, which are actually pretty hard to foam roll and work on, for instance, she just does that. So that if I didn't work with somebody though, I would be doing some stretching and mobility stuff and foam rolling, which I've written about, and I've done a lot of it. But then I just found that when I'm working with her every week, I don't need to do more mobility, so why take the time to do it? But if I weren't getting massage, I would be spending probably 15, 20 minutes a week doing mobility, especially in my upper, like my shoulders tend to get really tight. Also because I sit here all day, like a cave troll. And my hips, hips and always need, for us guys and girls that are heavy squatty, heavy deadlifting, as you know, your hips and legs, they always need help. So I would stretch though. I wouldn't do it before working out. I would do it after. So I'd like lift and then do mobility after, or just separate altogether. Regarding citrulline malate, I'm just kind of running through these. Improved endurance, really, I mean, that is its big benefit. Uh, which is you really will notice, you'll notice it with weightlifting, but because depending on what you're doing, a fair amount of heavier weightlifting is more anaerobic, but you would really notice with higher rep ranges and also with endurance stuff, you'd really notice it. I'm going down to the bottom here. All right, let's see. Okay, cool. Still got some time. For adding, I'll take this question on adding some extra legs to BLS, and just because I'll talk a little bit about like frequency and just changing your routine and how often can you train a muscle group. It really depends on what you're doing in the workouts. A good way to look at frequency is that it's a tool for hitting your weekly volume and intensity, meaning there's only so much you can do to a muscle group every week before you overtrain, right? So given the amount of weight that you're lifting, that's going to determine how many total reps you can do for whether it's your legs, back, arms, chest, whatever, over a course of 5 or 7 days. And frequency is you could do all of that work in one workout and then rest and then do it again in 5 or 7 days, or you could break that work up into several workouts. And given the research that I've seen, and just also working with so many people, it doesn't seem to matter for most people which one of those you choose. Although I have found some people tend to need more recovery time than others, and so that would bias them toward doing it all in one workout and resting more. And then some seem to be able to get away with a bit more volume than others. So then sometimes with those people, unless they want to sit in the gym for this big long marathon workout, it can be beneficial to break that up into a couple workouts. So that also, I mean, it's kind of a point of like, I wouldn't worry about it too much as you get more into this game and start trying different things. You will start to see, like, you'll just see that your body, try it. You could try splitting up your, training everything 2 times a week, but still keeping your total weekly reps in that 80 to 90 rep range and emphasizing the heavy. And then you could try it in one workout and see. But If you want to add some more legs to bigger and stronger, like the standard or thinner and stronger, the standard thing that I recommend, sometimes I get people that want to do that, is that add 3 sets of squats to your back day, so turn it into more of a lower body day, and do it after your deadlifts, and do it in the 8 to 10 rep range. So you know because you're going to do your real heavy squatting in a few days, and people have been happy with that. And also then realize there's only so much you're going to get out of any training. And it doesn't matter what program that you do, you only need to get so much out of it in a given period of time. And you can't just do more to get more. So. Yeah, thanks. This is good. I'll see you on the next one. Let me just go up here. Sorry for the silence. I'm just finding there's a lot of talk about Reddit here. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm not on Reddit is just because it can take too much time, and I have too many other things to do, and like I don't watch YouTube videos. I don't go on Reddit. I don't even bother with Facebook beyond my work because it's just a time thing. I'll take this question here. Pasta, grains, bread versus fruits. Preferred carbs for bulking and cutting. You definitely, there's only, I'd say the downsides to fruit are when you're bulking is that you need a lot of food. You need a lot of calories, and fruit is at least fibrous fruits like apples and bananas and things like they're better for cutting because they fill you up and they're not that calorie dense. And also, you generally speaking, you want to have a variety of carbs because the type of sugar in fruit, which is fructose, needs to be processed in the liver, and it's good for replenishing liver glycogen stores, but not so good for muscle glycogen stores. You want something that's glucose rich for that, which would be like a starchy type of carb, like a potato or grains, or like those aren't starch carb, but grains are also good for replenishing muscle stores. So I would say if you're bulking, sure, have fruit, but have a variety of carbs, and that's also just kind of a good idea in general. Like again, this is not super important, but it's just something to make a note of, that like in your post-workout meal, for instance, your carbohydrates. This is especially true if you're going to be doing like a second workout in the day, or if you're an athlete and you do your weightlifting workout, and then let's say you have your cardio or you have some other type of stuff later. You want to get those carbs in, and you're going to want glucose-rich carbs. And so you're going to want replenishment of both liver and muscle glycogen for your next workout or your next thing that you have to do. So when I'm bulking, I'm eating a lot more grains and grain-based products than fruit, just because, if I need 200 carbs at dinner, for instance, what am I going to do? Eat 10 bananas or something? Or 8 bananas? Or am I just going to have a bowl of pasta? Yeah, the app I talked about earlier. The app it's probably like 75% done. We probably have another month or so, and then we'll be testing it internally, probably for at least 2 or 3 weeks, just to iron out all the obvious bugs and get it into real good shape. And then I'll be announcing a public beta on it, and then we'll have some fun. Any other questions? I'm kind of going through here. Here's one on cutting. So this person has lost a lot of weight and it stopped. Yeah, I'll take this one. This person has lost a lot of weight and stopped, assuming that the fat was turning into muscle. So, one, you can't turn fat into muscle. You can lose fat or build muscle, and you can do them simultaneously if you're new to weightlifting, or if you have muscle memory on your side, like you used to be in really good shape and then you lost muscle and now you're putting it back on. But if you're an experienced weightlifter, you're not really going to build any muscle to speak of when you're in a calorie deficit, but you can preserve muscle, and that is the goal, is to preserve muscle when you're in a calorie deficit. But this is a good opportunity for me to talk about what really is a weight loss plateau? Because when people email me or message me and they open with that, I'm not, I'm stuck, I'm not losing weight. I always have to ask them to clarify, well, what do you mean? In a lot of cases, it'll answer with something like, oh, well, my weight hasn't changed in 4 days, or even my weight hasn't changed in 7 days, or they're weighing themselves, for instance, once a week, and they had a bad weigh-in or whatever. And my point here is a weight loss plateau, a legitimate weight loss plateau, is where your body weight and body composition doesn't change for 7 to 10 days. So meaning that you haven't lost fat in 7 to 10 days. And depending on where you're at in the whole process, you may or may not see that on the scale. If you're new to weightlifting and you start weightlifting and you go into a calorie deficit, you will probably gain weight for the first couple weeks. Not fat, but weight. You're going to lose fat, but you're not going to see it on the scale because you're going to be immediately going to be adding a fair amount of water and glycogen to your muscles, which increases body weight. And so a lot of usually like girls will be a little bit freaked out when they start weightlifting and start in a calorie deficit and then see their weight go up. They're like, what the hell? And that's all that's going on. So that initial period, you just, it is what it is. And one reliable indicator of fat loss is waist shrinking. So if your pants are getting looser or your waist measurement is getting smaller, you're losing fat regardless of what's happening on the scale. If that's not happening, if your weight is staying the same and your waist is staying the same, then you're staying the same. And a good way to also track weight is you can weigh yourself once a week, but that works better for people like that whose bodies don't really fluctuate much in terms of water retention. My body tends to be like that, so it's not a big deal for me. But a more reliable way to track weight is to weigh yourself every day. Don't worry about so much the day to day, but then take an average every 7 to 10 days. Like choose one, 7 or 10 days. And if you see that average going up or down, that really tells you what's going on. And that prevents you from getting trolled by just a bad weigh-in, by like, you had more sodium the day before, and so you're holding a pound more water. And, so you think on the scale, you think you didn't change in the last week, but you actually did lose a pound of fat. It's just being obscured right now by the pound of water that you're holding. That's what a legitimate weight loss plateau is. And again, when that happens, there are many different reasons why it can happen. In most cases, why it happens is people are just not being very accurate with their food intake. They're eating a bit more. Even if they have a meal plan, they're like sneaking in a little bit more here and there. They're just eating more than they should really. Or they're overestimating how many calories they're burning. That's very common where they'll use too high of an activity multiplier. They'll use 1.5 when they exercise 4 hours a week. Unless you have a very fast metabolism, you can't use a 1.5 multiplier. I mean, I don't use one ever, and I exercise on average probably about 6 hours a week. And when I start my cut, I'm kind of starting with a 1.4 multiplier usually. So that's another common mistake, is just thinking that they're burning more calories than they actually are. So again, we're kind of coming back to they're just overeating, or they're really, it just boils down to overeating is really what it comes down to. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's water retention. Again, when you're in a calorie deficit, cortisol levels are higher, and that increases water retention in general. Girls seem to struggle with water retention more than guys, and that's probably also due to hormonal, like higher estrogen is going to hold more water. So that's that's something to keep in mind. And then the last thing, like really, when you eliminate all those variables, it then could just be related to metabolism, where they simply need to increase how much energy they're burning or decrease energy intake. And you can only go so far, like I was talking about earlier. You can, once you start getting around, your intake is around your BMR. If you're not losing weight at that, it's time to flip it around and start reverse dieting back up to where your metabolism should be, and then going back into a calorie deficit. Regarding water retention, there's nothing really, like natural diuretics are shitty. They don't really do anything, like the dandelion things and whatever. The diuretics that people that compete, they use drugs. Yeah, diuretic drugs work, but they're dangerous, and I wouldn't recommend anybody to mess with them. Creatine water retention problems are kind of a thing of the past, really. It's not so much of a problem anymore. I know that when guys compete, a lot of them will cut out creatine. toward the end of when they're getting stage ready, like the last couple weeks, and that's because they need to be so lean and so dry that even the slightest amount of subcutaneous water retention is going to be noticeable. But for me, for you, it's you probably won't notice anything. That also answers the question if you should go into a cut, directly from cut into a bulk. If you search for metabolism on Muscle for Life, you'll find the article I wrote on reverse dieting, and that's what I recommend. That when you're done cutting, you reverse diet into a bulk. Don't just go from eating 1,800 calories a day to 3,200 calories a day, because you're going to gain fat faster than you should. Basically, what you want to be doing is going from 1,800 to 1,900 a day for a week to maybe 2,000, maybe 2,100. Stay there for a week, 22, 23, there for a week. Then maybe you can jump in 200 calorie increments with your metabolism speeding up. That will help you gain the minimum. Really, in my experience working with people, you can gain no fat. You can go from the end of your cut, all the way up to where your TDE should be without gaining any fat. So now you're eating quite a bit more food. You generally even look better because you're fuller, and then you can start moving into a surplus, bulking, and of course you're going to gain fat then. But that's a nice way to get into it. How long would you eat a maintenance diet after reverse dieting before cutting again? I like to see 2 or 3 weeks at least at maintenance with steady weight. So when you reach your TDE, you're there for a couple weeks and your weight stabilizes. That's enough. How much protein? Regarding protein needs, to maintain energy for working out, protein is not so much for energy when you're working out. It's for maintaining muscle or building muscle. If you weigh 175 pounds, 50 grams of protein a day is just not enough, period. I know this is kind of a subject of controversy, how much protein do you really need? But the general consensus, among the people that are better informed on the lowest end, is if you're weightlifting regularly, would be 0.8 grams of protein per pound. I recommend between that and 1 gram per pound when you're bulking, and a little bit higher when you're cutting. And I talk about why I'm on the website. If you search for protein, you'll find an article on how much protein you need to build muscle. 50 is not enough. I don't know why. It's true that the longer you've been weightlifting, the more efficiently your body can actually use protein. So theoretically, the less you need to actually maintain your muscle. So maybe you're able to maintain muscle on 50 grams, but I would be shocked if you could build muscle on 50 grams of protein a day. I don't think it's possible. If you're a very experienced weightlifter, maybe you could maintain your physique at 50 grams. Even that's a bit surprising. I would think that you would at least need to eat something closer to the RDI, but if you're cutting, there's no way 50 is enough. You're going to lose muscle unless you're on drugs. If you're on drugs, then sure, your protein synthesis rates are going to be much higher. But even if you're on drugs, I don't know if 50 grams is enough actual raw material to maintain, especially if you're cutting. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions, then I got to get back to work. Yeah, this is work, but this is different than my normal kind of work. Let's see. I'll take a question here on training abs. Why go to failure? Training to failure is not, it's not necessary for all exercises, all sets. I wrote an article about this actually. If you just search for failure on Muscle for Life, it'll come up. And if you're training to failure every set, every exercise that you're doing, there's a better chance of actually overtraining. Training to failure is more like a tool you use sparingly, with big heavy lifts, kind of like something like negatives, for instance. Negatives are really only useful for bench pressing, because how do you negative anything else? But yeah, a negative is a tool you can use, but it's something you're going to do regularly. And regarding abs, though, abs are an interesting muscle group in that they're so resilient. They can recover so quickly. It's kind of similar to calves, where you can just train abs so hard and they just bounce back, bounce back, bounce back. And they're a smaller muscle group, so they don't put a lot of strain on the central nervous system. Like, you know, when you're doing heavy deadlifts, if you're doing heavy deadlifts to failure, not only is that rocking every muscle in your body, it's just rocking your nervous system as well. Abs are a smaller muscle group. You don't get that nervous system overload from it, and that's more just a, I guess, an experience type thing where I've noticed that you can train abs hard, and you know, especially when you're doing the body weight stuff. You know, the weighted I kind of keep in a rep range, and again, like, I guess I tend to go to failure, 1 rep before failure on that, and then doing the body weighted stuff, you know, just the body weight stuff like leg raises or air bikes, just going to failure, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. So. Um, Regarding 50 less carbs on the weekdays and 50 carbs on the weekend, I guess, I don't know. It's not gonna do anything. Like 50 less, who cares? You know, why would you want less carbs on your training days and more carbs on your rest days? That makes no sense. You need less carbs on your rest days because you're burning less energy, unless you're very active doing something else. But if you're just, you know, if it's just the weekend and you're just kind of resting, then there's no point to eat a ton of carbs or more. Regarding videos, instructionals, yeah. I mean, I actually had shot some before, but looking at it, I didn't really like them. I need to get it really set up in a proper gym. There just aren't that many options around here. It's gonna be a bit of a pain in the ass. I am gonna do it though. It's on the list. All right, so let's wrap up. Anybody else have any other questions? Drink some water. This is how I drink a bunch of water every day, by the way. This is a gallon, and I make sure I drink a whole one before I leave, and then I drink some more at home, and that's how I get there. Regarding pains, I'll take that as the last question. I mean, I'll take this next one. Okay, so regarding the elbow pains and shoulder pains, yeah, I run into that stuff now and then. Like I said, I mean, getting a massage every week really helps. You can do your own version of mobility stuff, because obviously that can get expensive. Where, like, if you have shoulder issues, you can do all kinds of, there's good mobility exercises, stretches, dislocations, and getting like a lacrosse ball or just a golf ball or baseball, and mashing your shoulder up, that can help a lot. And then icing can definitely help. I know it kind of goes, the research goes both ways, but I've found that, like, I've I've had patellar, well, I guess it's hard to say. I think it's patellar tendon in my right knee. Was like, it actually wasn't a problem with the tendon. It was that my right quad, especially my VMO, was very tight and it was pulling on it. So I'd squat, and it wouldn't be super painful. It'd just be a little bit uncomfortable, and I would ice it after, and of course it brings down inflammation and that helps. But the underlying problem was the tight quad, tight VMO. So what I've found is normally the case is when you're feeling joint pains, at least in my body, it's normally because some other muscle is tight. Like, I was having shoulder tightness and issues, and it turned out that my scalene muscles in my neck were so tight. Actually, it was just recently, like when I was in Vegas with all my guys from Legion. I went and got a massage at the hotel, and I was explaining to the girl that sometimes when I'm pressing, especially my incline pressing, I would just get tightness in this area, and it's just kind of annoying. And she's like, "Oh, it's probably scalenes," and then started working on it, and it was beyond painful. Like, the girl that I see weekly doesn't do that. It was so bad. I was like, whole body anxiety pain, where I'm just like, I can't. This is ridiculous. So that's where, coming back to mobility work and, you know, Kelly Starrett's stuff, I really like his stuff, is finding those tight muscles and finding that are putting pressure on joints and holding things in incorrect positions, because, you know, the periosteum around the bone is very sensitive, so it doesn't take a lot. A muscle can be too tight, and then you put a bunch of weight on it, and then that can be enough to really you know, piss off just those little nerves in different areas. And what you would think would be like a joint problem, it's actually not a joint problem, it's more just a muscular problem. Regarding hardships of starting MFL, you know, I can't really say I had any hardships. There was a lot of work, obviously, and it's still a lot of work. And I kind of went into it not really knowing what to expect. Even when I published my first book, it was just kind of like, let's see if people care. And then people did care, and I was like, that's cool. But I wouldn't say that there was a ton of hardship. Going into it, I was very familiar with just marketing in general and selling information. I hadn't sold any information products before, but I had done a bunch of studying on it, and I had done a lot of copywriting in my previous work, so I did have a good like mental. I knew what it took to sell things, but yeah, I mean, I guess there weren't my experience with MFL and the books and Legion has been very. I guess I've been lucky that it's gone very well, very quickly, and very smoothly. So, all right, so let's do. Let's take. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for all of the kind words, and we're gonna do this again. But we'll do it in a month, and I'll send everything out. And in the meantime, I'll send out a survey, and then we'll find out like what's the best time for the majority of people, because this is probably not the best time. But and I'll take this last question here because I played ice hockey when I was growing up, so I'll take this one. So if you play hockey or another active sport, will that affect muscle gains? Not necessarily. It kind of depends how much cardio that entails. When I was playing hockey, it was like, I think we had 2 practices a week, and then we had a game every other week or something like that. And I wasn't even lifting at the same time, but my point is, like, it wasn't that much cardio. On the average, it's maybe 5 hours a week, and that's not a problem. Just have some protein before and and after, and you'll be all right. You may need to, and this is also relevant because I've worked with people that play different sports. You may need to set up your workouts though around your schedule. Like, I've worked with quite a few guys that play rugby, and of course they run into the issue like they need to train their legs, but they can't blast them because then they can't run in practice and in games. So what we have to do is we have to take their leg, like coming back to frequency, take what they would do for a week and break it up into 3 different leg workouts, because then that allows them to do 3 to 5 sets, let's say, of heavier work, and then some heavier and then some lighter or whatever. But the point is they can get all their training in without getting really sore, without losing a bunch of performance. So you have to think with that. It depends on the sport you're playing. You may not be able to do like a chest day, for instance, 1 day a week if that's going to mess with your sport. You may need to take that chest work and do it, turn it more into an upper body day that you're going to do a couple days a week with some other stuff. Maybe you're going to do push instead. You're going to take 3 sets for chest, 3 sets for shoulders, and you're going to do that 3 times a week instead of just doing a chest day or a shoulders day, stuff like that. All right, I gotta stop or I'll never get anything done. So yeah, I hope you liked it. I thought it was cool. I look forward to doing the next one. I know that this is going to be recorded on Ustream, so and then we're gonna like set it up on this page so you can always come back and check out previous ones. So if you're just getting here and you missed it or whatever, or if you want to go back and review anything, it'll be there. Well, I think we're gonna stick the videos on YouTube too, so they'll whatever, it'll be everywhere. So again, thanks. I hope you like it, and we have some other cool stuff coming with Legion. I want to set up basically a service where people can email for help with training, nutrition, diet, whatever, health stuff, and not have to pay anything. Like, I know other companies, a couple other companies like pretend to do this, where you can email them and then they just tell you to buy stuff. I want to set it up where you actually get help, not just buy stuff. You know what I mean? Kind of like what I do personally. I answer a bunch of emails, do a bunch of blog comments, but I can only do so much for myself personally, so I want someone else to help me with Legion, where any questions that you have, you can get actual help and good advice, not just like, that's a good question. That's a good question. Here, buy some shit. You know what I mean? I hate that. It's stupid. So that, and I want to start doing these. I just want to, do more to give people the help they need, because I remember when I was new to weightlifting and I just didn't know anything, and I would go to ask people in the gym or read magazines or whatever. It was just so hard to get good advice. So have some other ideas on how I can just get more good advice out there. So keep an eye out for that. And like I said, my new books, the second editions of Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, will be out today for sure. Just waiting on some last couple changes. So keep an eye on your inbox. I'll send an email. Probably within the next couple hours, an email will go out, and then the whole thing's going to kick off. It's going to be fun. You're going to like the giveaway. I have so much cool shit in there. So keep an eye out for that. And thanks again. I'll see you next time.